What's good, everybody? We are live on Fantasy Football Sunday, presented by FantasySportsMarkets.com. Happy Sunday, happy week 4 to you. Can't believe it's already a quarter of the season almost through, and we are here every Sunday. It is myself, Ben Heisler, for Fantasy Sports Markets, my good buddy Justin Fensterman from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio and Fantasy Alarm. Fensty, happy week 4 to you, buddy. You're rocking another jersey after rocking the Lions last week in Detroit and Bill Laimbeer. You're going to the Lakers today. Why?
Because, Ben, and I took a pie in the face because of how bad Kenny Golladay was on social media. But this week, the city of LA, the Chargers, you gotta love a potential stack of Phillip Rivers, Austin Eckler, and Keenan Allen. How do you not love that? I feel like it's such a lock, and I know our buddy D-Bro does as well. And that's why, representing the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because we're gonna skyhook you right to the winner's circle.
There's so much to love about that matchup. And again, part of what we love about this show is that it can be totally interactive with you guys. You can send in your questions, whether it be streaming on YouTube Live, whether it be on Periscope, wherever you guys are finding us today. We are here for you. Also, a reminder at the bottom of the screen, there is a promo code. It says FF Sunday for $5 free at FantasySportsMarkets.com. If you use that promo code when you go ahead and register and log in at FantasySportsMarkets.com, you can be a new user, you can be an existing user. Whatever user you are, that $5, if you haven't used that code before, it can get you a free $5 entry in any of our contests. And Fensty, once again, over $220,000 is up for grabs at Fantasy Sports Markets, where you can play DFS with no salary caps and just go nuts today. All the Chargers. You can even throw in Dontrell Inman if you want into your fantasy lineup today. He is absolutely in play.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny because my producer and good friend also covers football very nicely, Sandro Anello from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, when we were going over value plays for salaried sites, Inman, who else is there? Someone's got to be able to help spell Keenan Allen whatsoever with any kind of coverage. And Inman is a nice, cheap play. And again, you're looking for that perfect roster bonus like you always talk about, Benny Heist.
Absolutely.
This is the type of difference maker that could make that kind of impact.
So we're excited to spend the next hour with you guys. Always excited to have a lot of fun on the show. Before we get to some of those questions, Fensty, news and notes. We talked about it briefly in our preview video. Melvin Gordon is back. It was not going to be its Le'Veon Bell type of holdout. We always knew that he was going to return. Can you take us through the sort of decision of why he ended up coming back, and furthermore, whether you consider him, even though the reports are that he's going to be an emergency play, does that still mean that if you drafted him in season long, you play him, maybe he gets a couple goal line opportunities? How are you looking at Melvin Gordon today?
I have one share in season long, and I didn't draft him, but I kept him as a 4th-round keeper, and I am going to be a spectator this week, Ben Heisler, and I am going to watch others start him and take that risk. Now this is a big show me week. This is a big theme. Chris Carson, show me week. Austin Eckler, show me week. Melvin Gordon, show me week. I want to see what this guy could do, but I am not going to invest in Melvin Gordon. Right now, expected to be used in quotes, according to Rap Sheet, emergency uses only. I don't like seeing emergency, and that brings bad vibes to me, Ben. So I don't know about you, but I am just going to be a spectator when it comes to Melvin Gordon this week.
I think the problem was Justin Jackson's injury, and that ended up catching all of us by surprise, because the beginning of the week, I was looking at somebody like Justin Jackson as maybe a nice DFS dart throw this week. I was really intrigued by the running back that had saw his snap increase go up by about 8 to 10% each week of the first 3 weeks of the season. He was averaging just under 8 yards a carry. Justin Jackson's a good running back, and now he's relegated to that number 3 role on the depth chart. I thought this was the perfect opportunity, especially with how good Tony Pollard was last week for the Cowboys. So I thought this was a smash spot for Justin Jackson. Turns out that he's not playing. And now I just think they're looking at Melvin Gordon saying, okay, let's say this game is a little bit closer than we need it to be, or let's say Austin Eckler gets hurt, then we go ahead and throw him in. So again, I'm not sure sort of how we go through with this, but I don't want to have any really investing opportunities in Melvin Gordon today.
Nope. And again, if Melvin Gordon ends up coming in and gets 5-6 carries and they happen to be goal line touchdowns, then I'm just going to shrug my shoulders and be like, I'm glad I waited. because I'd rather be the guy that's sitting there this week and then next week really get back through and look in the analysis of the Chargers run game. Justin Jackson expected to be out for the next few weeks, actually, Benny Heiss. So we'll have to see. But again, I just think the smart play is to watch Melvin Gordon and not invest in him and go all in on Austin Eckler.
No doubt about it. All right, first question coming in is from our buddy Kevin out in Seattle. It looks like there's 3 wide receivers, Fancy, that we have to choose from. Not sure whether it's PPR or not, but DeMarcus Robinson, who's on the road against the Lions today, D.D. Westbrook on the road at Denver, or his teammate DJ Chark up against the Broncos. And the Broncos are dealing with some secondary issues and some injuries today. One of the conversations I was having with my buddy Debro over at the Quan Edge is that one Jaguars receiver is going to go off today because they're going to be matched up with Yadom, who's just an awful corner for Denver. We're just not sure who it is. He thinks it's going to be Chris Conley. Conversely, Darius Slay is a game-time decision, and he would most likely end up being on Robinson on the outside. If that's the case, then I probably want to stay away from DeMarcus Robinson and focus it on somebody else. So any of those 3 guys, do you prefer more than the other? Because if it's all sort of same, I'm probably going with DeMarcus Robinson just because I know I love the quarterback getting him the football and the highest total of the game.
Yes, and again, we're trying to find reasons, and I've been trying to find reasons to not want to invest in DeMarcus Robinson. But again, when you're looking at opportunity, it's still going to be hard in Jacksonville to tell who's going to be the prioritized receiver. We've seen what DJ Chark has done this season, but still, I feel a little bit safer, especially with the high game total in that KC-Detroit game. I feel like you have to go with DeMarcus Robinson. This is a time where you want to be safe.
I'm with you there, too. I think Robinson is still going to get a bunch of volume. A lot of conversation, Fensty, too, in Kansas City is that he's been putting himself in a position to make a lot of money this offseason. Like, all of a sudden, DeMarcus Robinson, purely based on the fact that Pat Mahomes is his quarterback, and he's made a couple terrific touchdown catches, is in line for somebody that could actually have a pretty substantial offseason, maybe make some money. Do you look at him as somebody that you think could possibly get rich this offseason?
I do, but at the same time, we're going to have to see what happens when Tyreek Hill comes back and how the depth works out. It's kind of like, in a way, the Chargers situation with the run game. Now that Melvin Gordon's back, what's this going to mean for the long-term future of the Chargers now that they've got so many backs? It's going to be the same way here in Kansas City. So with that, I think there's a chance. He's proven it thus far. But once Hill comes back, those targets are going down, even for Mr. Hardman himself, who's been the biggest beneficiary since Tyreek Hill has gone down.
Not without question there. Already seeing us a question coming in from YouTube Live. Apparently, once again, we're having some issues with Periscope. I think that is on my end. And the reason I say that is because sometimes when your internet connection isn't 100%, typically you'll see the beautiful Kansas City skyline behind me. That is not the case the last couple of weeks. I've been in Chicago with my family. So I think that's part of the reason. So if you're looking for us on Periscope, we are available on YouTube Live. I'll go ahead and tweet out the link once again. So appreciate your guys' patience with us.
You are not allowed to visit your family again until the season is over.
That's perfectly, yeah. I think I got like one more time coming. Hopefully between now and then I can get my my folks to get on a real internet plan. One that doesn't involve, the little boop, 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 boop.
Oh, man, you're on dial-up still?
No. But it's, I'll tell you this. Their service it rhymes with a company named Bay B&B. Boolers Internet. So we need to get that stepped up. Shout out to David Heisler for always helping us out. From Derek, we've got a couple questions, and I see one from PD Dubs. I see one from Sam over on YouTube Live. We'll get to all of your guys' questions. Also, hit us up on Twitter. He is at Fensty Sports. I am at Benny Heiss. From Derek on YouTube Live, another question involving DeMarcus Robinson, except it's a toss-up between him and Allen Robinson. It is, this is so funny. He said standard PPR. Oh, does that mean
one or the other.
is that a traditional PPR? Because there's standard leagues and then there's PPR leagues. I'm gonna go ahead and say that it's a PPR league. I think he just means that it's regular points per reception league. So if it's PPR, are you going Allen Robinson? Both of them have tough matchups, assuming Darius Slay is going to play, right, Fensty? Allen Robinson is going to get shadowed up against Xavier Rhodes at home against Minnesota. It's kind of a rainy, dreary day in Chicago today, so not ideal throwing weather. Question to follow up on that game with you, by the way, but which Robinson are you taking in this matchup? DeMarcus in the Dome, or Allen Robinson at home against the Vikings?
Man, I really want to go with DeMarcus once again, only because while we're talking about Slay should play, but I'm seeing true game time decision, which means he's not near 100%. So again, as much as I want to go Robinson here, I want to give the Bears a little bit more credit, Ben, and I'm going to go with Allen Robinson there.
I think Robinson is still going to see a lot of targets, a lot of volume. Mitch Trubisky Monday night still missed a couple open throws, but he was completing about 80 to 85% of his passes. Again, against Washington, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But I think I was encouraged knowing that he was getting the ball out quickly. They were moving him around in the pocket. I still think Robinson's just going to get more targets and more volume. DeMarcus could end up, breaking one open as he tends to do. But I think for me, I would go Allen Robinson as well. So good question, Derek.
You have no Gabriel there as well, so that will also benefit Allen Robinson too in that regard.
Yeah,
let's talk about that though for a second,
sure.
Ben, because you mentioned Redskins here, and we have to look at that Giants offense today because I feel like after this week, everybody's going to make Daniel Jones their new face of fantasy. I feel like that's going to happen. And I feel like I need to be on the ride this week. And we're talking stacks before, already mentioning the Chargers. What about a giant stack, though, of something like Daniel Jones, Evan Engram, and Sterling Shepard? I love that today.
Yeah, and then run it back with Terry McLaurin if you get the green light for him. That's actually a really good question because you bring that up. And I see questions coming in from PD Dubs, from Sam, from Seth. We'll get to all of your guys' questions, I promise. We make sure that we answer all of your questions here on Fantasy Football Sunday presented by Fantasy Sports Markets. If Terry McLaurin is out for Washington, are you giving up on that Are you giving up on that stack both ways? Because both teams are in such a fantastic position today, Fensty, that it concerns me if that's going to be the case. McLaurin just adds so much of a dimension to Washington's offense. Like, all of a sudden, I'm not really jumping on... I guess maybe Trey Quinn is safe, but I don't know what his ceiling is. Same thing with Paul Richardson. Right. I liked him in an intriguing matchup because Kyle Fuller had been struggling for the Bears. Do you get on the Paul Richardson train? How do you handle what happens if Terry McLaurin is out?
I don't think there's any safety net. And again, I'm just going to watch it. I'm still going to go with my Giants stack there. I am, because I still think they'll put up a lot of production on the side. You mentioned McLaurin. McLaurin actually expected to play. There's optimism from the Redskins that he will actually play today. So it's funny then because I'm getting a lot of McLaurin or Julian Edelman. That's been one of the hardest questions for me to answer because with those guys, we don't have a good read on them. There's optimism McLaurin will play. Edelman expected to play, but reports coming out that the Patriots can actually limit him, which scares me to death, Ben. So when it comes to the Redskins, if McLaurin is out, I'm probably just going to be watching the Redskins and not investing on the other receivers. Maybe Trey Quinn in one lineup. But, Ben, I don't think there's any safety with this Redskins team besides McLaurin at this point.
All right. Well, actually, now that we bring up McLaurin, I'm going to answer Andrew's question, who's watching on Facebook. He says, with Terry McLaurin a game-time decision, who should I consider at the flex in case he doesn't play? I know the reports are that he's going to play, but let's see if any of these options, Fensty, are better options. Devontae Freeman, Curtis Samuel, or Stephon Diggs in a half-point PPR. So Freeman is at home against Tennessee. Curtis Samuel, Carolina, is on the road at Houston. And then Stephon Diggs, of course, on the road against the Bears. I can't in good conscience start Stephon Diggs right now just because he's not seeing the volume. It's a terrible matchup against the Bears. I still feel like McLaurin, if he plays, is probably the best play out of all these guys. But between McLaurin, maybe Devontae Freeman, and Curtis Samuel, who do you go with this week?
Man, you know what? I want to give Devonta Freeman one more shot, but he hasn't really proven it just yet. You know what? I love this matchup for Carolina, and I will go with Curtis Samuel there.
Okay, yeah, Samuel's in a really good spot. And again, he's
Yep.
100% healthy. Kyle Allen, I believe, locked onto him. Samuel ended up being the most targeted receiver on Carolina last week. So
He and Moore are in great spots today against Houston. And don't forget about the Houston side of the ball as well. I want an investment in that matchup, especially from the receiver end for both.
let's continue on. YouTube Live is where our next question comes in from our buddy PD Dubs. He says, good morning. Any concerns with the Detroit pass catchers today with Matthew Stafford being banged up? So I heard a stat, and I think it was from Al Zeidenfeld on the Daily Fantasy Edge, where he was talking about 11 out of the 14 best games for Matt Stafford in his career have come when the total has been over 50. That's the case today. They are at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. Matthew Stafford is throwing the ball deep more than he ever has in his entire career, Fensty, and Kenny Galladay's got touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 games. Did not have a good week 3.
The game where I bet a pie in the face bet on him.
I know. And the thing was, Fensty, like, he was in a smash spot there, and this is the beauty sometimes of fantasy football. I think it's weird. Like, Galladay is in such a good smash spot that I almost wonder whether he's going to be too low owned this week. I'm not too concerned about Stafford. I know that the hip injury is a bit of a concern, but he still can drive with his legs. He still has a terrific arm. And in a dome, you can beat the Chiefs' defensive backs. Rashad Veland hasn't been particularly good this year. I think Galladay absolutely has a chance for a long touchdown, as with Marvin Jones. Hawkinson might be able to be back in play. I'm a big fan of the Lions receivers this week. What about you?
You know what? I am too, because of something you said, Ben. Low ownership projection. Everyone, and let me tell you something. Am I holding a grudge against Kenny Galladay because of what happened last week? No. I'll take a pie in the face every single week if I have to by predicting a great matchup wrong, because that's what it is on paper, and that's fantasy. It's not always going to work out your way. I don't have concerns with either one, Galladay or Marvin Jones, if Matthew Stafford's out there. You need to get involved in every game that Kansas City plays, because most of the time it's going to be a really, really high total, and you always have to invest there, even if it's not the top guy.
Okay, so we talked about the Lions receivers. What about on the running side? Kerryon Johnson is in a really nice spot, and the problem is that the Lions haven't really figured out how to use him effectively yet. They've looked at Kerryon Johnson and they said, okay, like, this is a guy that we're going to try and give a little bit more volume to, but they're not incorporating him the way they should in the passing game. We thought we'd see more of that after they released Theo Riddick, but just hasn't been the case. The Chiefs have struggled against the run game. They're not a good run game. They're bad bottom 5 DVOA against the run this year. I think if the Lions are going to hang in this game, it's going to be by controlling tempo, controlling pace, using Kerryon Johnson. Remember, Mark Ingram got into the end zone multiple times. Josh Jacobs, he didn't have the smash spot that we initially thought he would in week 2, but still ran for 99 yards. And then week 1, the Chiefs also struggle against the run. Are you buying in on Kerryon Johnson today, or do you think Stafford's going to have to throw 45 to 50 times?
I mean, not 100%. Matthew Stafford is going to have to rely on that run game a little bit. He's not, he's going to have to protect himself a little more. And I'll also say this, Ben. Kerryon Johnson came out and said he does not care one inkling about fantasy football. That's not why he plays the game. And I'm telling you, Ben, people see that kind of thing. Like, oh, he doesn't care, then I'm not going to use him ever. Wrong. That's the wrong way to think about it. Because everybody does care about getting in that end zone, and everyone cares about winning. And you can't take things that these NFL players say to granted in that regard. You have to look at the matchup, and especially on salaried sites, very fair price point for Kerryon Johnson. So, yes, I am going to be going in on him a bit today.
Right, and again, if you wanted to do a full game stack with the Chiefs and the Lions on fantasy sports markets, it's absolutely available to you as well. The question is whether or not you're going to try and figure out which Chiefs running back is going to be. Is it going to be LaShawn McCoy? Is it going to be Darrell Williams? Haven't seen whether or not...
I don't want any part of that, Ben. I don't want any...
Not this week.
That's why. No,
not this week.
It's too convoluted. I don't want, when it comes to DFS, to have anything to do with the Chiefs' run game.
The thing is, though, I'm not giving up on them just yet. Like, if I drafted Damian Williams, I haven't dropped him yet. Just because...
Oh, and that's season long.
In season long, right. In daily this week, yeah, it's too tough to try and differentiate. But Chiefs running backs in Andy Reid's system set a record last year, Fency, when it came to efficiency. An average 9.5 yards per target in the running game Like that's absurd. That never happens. So eventually this thing is going to get figured out. They're going to figure out who their guy is going to be. And if you have exposure to either McCoy or Damian Williams, hopefully both, it's not helping you a lot right now, but I do think it will pay dividends for you towards the end of the season.
And I agree with you, Ben, but when it comes to daily, and this is where daily and season long, this is where the fork in the road comes in, and this is what you were saying, is that for season long, I'm not saying drop these guys at all, because we all know Andy Reid loves using his running back, however many running backs he prefers to use. But in daily this week, and especially with the health issues we've seen from the run game thus far, again, I'm going to stay away from there. And you mentioned someone like a Kerryon Johnson. I feel safer going with him,
much
hoping
safer
that he has a breakout game than any of these guys.
Yes, and by the way, Nate Taylor from The Athletic, Damian Williams will not suit up against the Lions this week, so that has been confirmed.
Right.
Can
I bring something up very quickly?
Yeah, and Sam, I see your question. We will get to you next, my friend.
Right. Let's talk about the tight end position.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of guys that are not in the top three. We won't have Kittle today. He's on a bye.
Yep.
So there are a lot of guys that aren't those top end tight ends that you can use today. And Will Dissly, obviously we want to attack the Cardinals, and I feel like that's not the best kept secret anymore. Everyone knows that. But Ben, I worry a little bit, especially on fantasy sports markets, about ownership of Will Dissly when you've got guys like Austin Hooper and even Delaney Walker who are battling each other in great spots. And you've got Darren Waller as well in a good spot.
Yeah,
so I
really
feel
good
like
spot.
that a lot of people, too many, are going to be on Will Dissly. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what to do, especially on FSM, because, again, we want the guys that are going to score the most, and he's got the best matchup, but everybody's going to be on this guy today.
I think that here's what I'll say to this. I think on the salary sites, Dissly is going to be the guy. On FSM, I don't. I think ownership for Dissly will probably be upwards of 10 to 15%. Because I think people are going to say Dissly, okay, yeah, he'll probably get into the end zone, maybe get 4 or 5 targets, and that's fine. I don't think I don't think people are looking at Dissly on FSM specifically and saying, I don't think he's going to outscore Travis Kelce. I don't think he's going to outscore Evan Ingram. I don't think he's going to outscore Darren Waller. Hell, even Greg Olsen or Austin Hooper or Delaney Walker might outscore Will Dissly. But part of the reason that he's so appealing this week is, A, the Cardinals have been the worst team in the league by a mile at stopping the tight end position. We talked about that over the last several weeks. And furthermore, you know, there's just, if you're playing him on the salary sites, he's really, really cheap. You don't have to worry about salaries on FSM. So go for the best matchup, go for the best plays. I think when it comes to expected volume in the middle of the field, like Travis Kelce's going to be fine this week. Him and Sammy Watkins, Kelce's not going to have to deal with Darius Slay. Who's going to stop Travis Kelce in the middle of the field for the Lions? They've been a good secondary. They've been a good defense, but Chiefs are a whole new animal. We thought the Ravens had a really good defense, and the Chiefs just completely tore them apart. Evan Ingram with Daniel Jones. Evan Ingram, let's talk about his targets for the next 30 seconds or so. How many targets, just off the top of your head, do you think Evan Ingram has this year?
Gonna go probably in the 20s, mid to late 20s.
He has 30 targets in 3 games. Evan flipping Ingram. And he's a wide receiver playing tight end. Let's be honest. He has at a minimum of 6 catches, minimum of 48 yards, his 2 touchdowns in 3 games, 2 games over 100 yards. Like, he's an absolute stud. And Daniel Jones fits this offense. Like, that was something that we talked about last week, that in Pat Shurmur's offense, Daniel Jones actually makes a lot of sense because Eli Manning couldn't complete the ball in the intermediate part of the field. Daniel Jones can. He can also extend plays with his legs. He's not going to look this good over the rest of the season. Let's not make any mistake about it. But the matchup this week against Washington is too good, and I just think everything sets up well for him to have a great game.
And again, that's why with Daniel Jones, I want to make sure that everywhere that I'm going to be using Daniel Jones in DFS today, I am literally handcuffing him with someone from that Giants team, whether it's Ingram, whether it's Shepard, whether it's both. Because if I'm going in on Daniel Jones, I better be getting that double play action, and that's what I want when I handcuff there with someone like an Ingram or a Sterling Shepard. So that's why if I'm going in on Daniel Jones today, despite the inexperience, I'm going all in on him in that regard.
All right, Sam, I promise we get to your question. He brings up a flex spot, half-point PPR, between Terry McLaurin, James White, or Montgomery. I'm assuming he means David Montgomery here of the Chicago Bears. So McLaurin once again.
He's on a bot.
Yes, exactly. So Terry McLaurin, on the road against the Giants, James White on the road against Buffalo, David Montgomery at home against the Vikings. In weather that's probably suiting up a little bit more favorably for him to get a few more touches today. To me, again, James White's probably the safest out of all those guys, right? Especially with how good Buffalo's pass defense is. Short, intermediate drops in the middle of the field to James White feel like his floor is probably going to be the highest. McLaren, to me, still feels like he's the highest ceiling player. Even if Montgomery gets, 15 to 20 carries, maybe he gets into the end zone once. I just feel like the matchup is far better. Minnesota's tough. Like, they're a good defense. And I know that Aaron Jones ran wild on him in week 2. I just don't see it for Montgomery. I think eventually he's going to be the guy, but I still worry about Tariq Cohen getting some carries. They still sprinkle in Mike Davis. If McLaren plays, I think that's the higher upside play with James White as the safer floor play. What about you?
Yes, with less competition there. But again, remember, and we have to put this disclaimer with Patriots running backs. I'll tell you this, the Julian Edelman injury, to me, that ups James White's value a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
Thinking that, and I'm not saying, because I'm not going to say that Buffalo is not going to put up a fight or anything like that. Their defense is a bit stingy. But at the same time, if they get any type of lead, the Patriots, they're just going to be in clock control the entire time. You're going to see Edelman out of that game more just so they can protect him. And I think that's going to benefit James White there. So I agree with you. With Montgomery, I need more from him, like you're saying, Ben. I was actually going to ask you, as someone who follows the Bears a ton and has for a while, what the heck is going on with this guy and why he's not getting close to 20 touches per game, and I'm only seeing it in one of the 3 weeks thus far. So I can't have that full trust in him.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. I'm still a believer in Montgomery's talent. It's very evident that whenever he's playing, he's the best running back for the Bears on the field. Does he have second-level speed? No, he's probably not going to have one of those 60 or 70-yard touchdown runs unless everyone just brings the kitchen sink on a full, all-out blitz, and Montgomery just goes right through the middle, and then nobody can catch him. But, he can break to the second level. He's so good, Fensty, at getting extra yards and breaking tackles and making the first guy miss. That he's going to eventually get himself in. And I think that's what makes him such a good red zone target. The problem is that they're still not... Matt Nagy can tend to be... He can get too cute, and that's the problem. I really like him. I think he's a really smart, offensive-minded guy, but I think sometimes he gets in his own head, and the problem is that he has a quarterback that's not executing the full game plan. So until the quarterback starts to get himself straightened out, I think that's going to be an issue for Montgomery. Most of his carries, and a lot of people looked at his stats and said, okay, Montgomery finally got 15-plus touches. Most of those came in the fourth when they were comfortably ahead. So we're still waiting for a little bit more consistency with Montgomery here. And I think eventually it'll come, but I think in this week I'd prefer Terry McLaren.
Yes.
Seth, our buddy Seth checks in on YouTube Live. And he needs a flex play at a half-point PPR. Does he go with Christian Kirk, David Montgomery, or DJ Moore? Again, Montgomery once again back in play. DJ Moore with a really nice match. We were talking about the Carolina receivers today on the road at Houston. But to me, Arizona, because of the amount of time that their offense spends on the field, because of how many 3 wide receiver sets they use, because of how much Christian Kirk has been targeted and what his snap count has been, I think he's the play that I probably prefer the most out of all 3 of those guys, Fensty, in a half-point PPR.
It's very, very close, but I'm also going to go with you there with Christian Kirk. Again, we're seeing what Kyler Murray's doing, spreading the ball around. So with that, I'm going to put some trust in Christian Kirk this week. Again, I love this matchup. You can really stack this Seattle-Arizona game.
Yes,
and I really like that, especially we talked about Disley. Don't forget, guys, about Chris Carson. Everyone's writing him off, but Pete Carroll has said that he is still putting that vote of confidence in Chris Carson. Penny could play today as well. So if there's anything, and again, a show-me week, this is it for Chris Carson. So don't sleep on him. And Russell Wilson, great spot today as well.
Yeah, I think if you were going to project the highest-owned cash game quarterback on fantasy sports markets this week, I would say number 1 would be Pat Mahomes. I'd say number 2 would be Lamar Jackson. I think number 3 would be Russell Wilson. And it's probably just because people love the matchup this week, and especially last week when he was so good, ended up being the top scoring quarterback in fantasy last week.
Right. So, and again, and I give credit to Fantasy Alarms Howard Bender for this, was talking about this on Sirius XM earlier in the week, and just how juicy of a full game stack this could be. I mean, you want to go with a Lockett, Disley, Russell Wilson type of trio there for a stack, you can. And then on the other side, you maybe want to go with something like a Fitzgerald there as well to get some action there, or even a Kirk. then I think you're in a good spot today. I want investment in this game.
We got a question from Twitter from @KingZK15. Toss it between two guys that neither of us are particularly fond of: Sony Michel or Kenyon Drake.
Oh my God! Woof.
You got to go Sony because he'll probably get an early touchdown, right?
Yeah, I hate the Drake. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't like Miami players, and I'm not going in on them just by default. I'm not overthinking this one.
All right, I see questions coming in. Still a few of them from Facebook. There's still a couple Twitter questions to get to as well. It is the top of the hour, so for those of you that are just jumping on that saw the tweet from us before, welcome in. It's Fantasy Football Sunday. Yes, this is a reset, again, for the second week in a row, even though we're not on the radio. But again, top of the hour. Let's give a station ID.
Right, Ben Heisler, let's go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Justin Fensterman, my good friend from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio and Fantasy Alarm. One of the best and sharpest minds in this business when it comes to fantasy, and a fantastic follow on the tweet machine at Fantasy Sports. We are here for Fantasy Sports Markets, Fantasy Football Sunday. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Fantasy Sports Markets, we are a DFS site with no salary cap, so you get to play the guys that you want to play. You draft who you want, and there's over $220,000 in prizes each and every week. And you can win it just by, entering a $10 contest, a $5 contest. There's a Beat Benny Heist for just $1 with $10 to first place. You can 10 times your entry fee for just $1. There's so many different contests you can jump in on today over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. And just for watching this live stream, there is a promo code for you as well for $5 free. One other thing that I want to point out, Fancy, that's new to Fantasy Sports Markets before we get to more of your guys' questions, and I see them from Paul, from Droppin' Science, from Ethan, from Fever. I mentioned that there's still a couple Twitter questions as well. As we mentioned, we get to all of your questions on this live show. Even if we have to go a little bit late, we're here until the bottom of the hour, but we answer all of your questions because we appreciate you guys spending part of your Sunday with us. There's a new feature at Fantasy Sports Markets that I think a lot of you guys are going to be really, really interested in, because you now have the ability, just for letting other people know about the site, that all of a sudden you can start playing daily fantasy with us with $100 in your account. There's a new Refer a Friend feature over at Fantasy Sports Markets. It could not be easier. Fancy, have you ever used Uber or Lyft? You lived in Washington, D.C. for a long time. Have you ever had to use a ride-sharing app?
Yes, I have, Ben.
Okay.
I have not lived under the rock for the last 10 years.
I figured as such. So you know how, if you want to share it, your Uber code with somebody, you can get a free ride and they can get $10, right?
Right.
It's so easy to do. At Fantasy Sports Markets, we decided we wanted to make it that easy for you guys to be able to share it with other people. So when you're logged in, you have to be registered and logged in. You will see right at the top of the screen, it says Refer a Friend. So you click that link. It gives you your own personal link. You can share it on social media. You can share it on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on WhatsApp. You can send it as a text or as an email. And every time that somebody else registers, you have a built-in code. All they have to do is click the link, sign up, they get $5 into their account, and you get $5 into your account, up to $100. So all you want to have to do to start with $100 to play daily fantasy all season long is to share FSM with your friends. Pretty simple, right?
No, that's amazing. I love that, and I can't wait to do it myself. And again, we're telling you that, again, non-salary and whatnot, and beating Benny Heisler is no easy task here. But everyone wants to beat Ben Heisler. Come on, it's Ben Heisler. Everyone loves seeing me get a pie in the face. You want to beat me in fantasy? Because I'll be having a ton of lineups there on FSM. Let's go. Let's play. No salary. And again, I love the Refer a Friend thing. That's amazing, Ben. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, that's a brand new thing we introduced this week. I have pinned to the top of the Fantasy Sports Markets page on Twitter at FSM Contests a 60-second video showing you exactly what I told you guys, how to be able to put it together. It's right there for you guys. You cannot miss it. Share it with your friends, and $100 in your FSM account can be there. That's far more than any of the other fantasy sites are going to be able to offer to you guys as well. Let's get back to some of your guys' questions here, as we got about 25 minutes left on the live stream. Let's see. Seth has one more quick question we can get to. Half-point PPR, David Montgomery, Chris Thompson, or Darrell Williams this week? Half-point PPR, Montgomery at home against the Vikings, Chris Thompson on the road against the Giants, or Darrell Williams on the road against the Lions. Where do you go here?
Man, I can't. Again, that trust in Chris Thompson, I'm still just waiting. I need more trust for him, so I'm not going to go. I'm going to go Montgomery there. Again, a safety play for me, Ben. I know we've talked about Montgomery and how kooky that Matt Nagy is, but still safety option there. Going to go Montgomery.
I think Montgomery is a great play. Chris Thompson is probably the highest floor play out of all those guys, just because Jay Gruden, you have to tie him up to make him want to play Adrian Peterson, right? Like,
right.
He has no interest in playing Adrian Peterson. He feels like Chris Thompson is the far better fit for this offense. They're using him more. He outsnapped him once again last week. And they're going to have to play from behind against the Giants today as well. So I think I'd probably go with Chris Thompson as a higher floor play. But David Montgomery, Darrell Williams, those are probably the higher upside plays. So good luck to you, Seth. Thanks as always for joining us on Fantasy Football Sunday. From Paul on YouTube Live, half-point PPR between Sony Michel, Chris Thompson, or Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber, very tough matchup on the road against the LA Rams today. I typically want nothing to do, Fensty, with the Bucs running back situation. You just never know who it's going to be. It's like a box of chocolates, except all the chocolates suck. So I think in this situation, I'd probably go with Chris Thompson just because I know what I'm going to get. With Sony Michel with Peyton Barber, I really don't.
You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I think you want the guy that you know, right? In fantasy, it's all about what you know. So I think that's the situation that I know. From Droppin' Science on YouTube, checking in. Half-point PPR flex play between John Ross, who is playing Monday night on the road at Pittsburgh, or Royce Freeman, who is at home this week going up against Jacksonville. Another tough spot for both of these guys. I think Jacksonville really started to prove some people last week in the Thursday night matchup against Tennessee. I think I was, just like all the other fish and betting Tennessee pretty favorably. I thought with Jalen Ramsey trying to get his way out of Jacksonville that they just wouldn't have any interest in playing, and sure enough, they showed up. Conversely, though, I feel like this is a spot too. Denver back at home, they need a win in the most desperate of ways. But Freeman dealt with an injury last week, and Phillip Lindsay finally had a Phillip Lindsay game. So I think the higher upside play for sure is John Ross, but I like the fact that they're giving Freeman, as long as he's healthy, the opportunity in the goal line to get himself 6 points.
Right. Not as much confidence in their receiving game as well. So, again, I'm fine. As much as with John Ross, you need that deep play, and I can't fully rely on that for all my production. At least with Royce Freeman, very encouraging after the 15 touches last week. So, again, I'm going to go with Royce Freeman there. A little bit of a safer option.
I'm going to go with Royce as well. From Ethan checking in on YouTube Live, we got a flex toss-up between Chris Godwin, who's been on the injury report throughout the week, or Frank Gore. Tough spot for Frank Gore, Fensty, going up against the Patriots defense. He looked terrific last week. The old man continues to churn out yards. But to me, Chris Godwin is probably the best play of these two guys, even though he hasn't been 100%. I feel like he's going to be in line for a big game. We saw, week 3 with Mike Evans having a smash spot opportunity against the Giants. It's a tougher spot, but Godwin in the middle of the field, that's where you can exploit the Rams, and I feel like he's in line to have a bigger game this week.
The Patriots have let up an average of under 40 yards per game rushing. Just think about that for a second. And Frank Gore, he still has it, but he's as old as the hills. So again, let's not overthink it. Chris Godwin should play. He's healthy, so he should be fine. And I think, again, safer spot. I'm afraid to run against the Patriots right now because the difference between them and number 2, which is Baltimore, at 60 yards per game, it's astronomical right now. So, again, Patriots able to bottle up the run so well, I can't go with Frank Gore.
They've been a remarkable defense, New England has. And I think we all expected their defense to probably take a step in the right direction. The problem is that their offense, which we all thought was going to be more run dominant this year, we weren't sure at the beginning of the season how much Josh Gordon we were going to see. They had Antonio Brown for a week. We thought they was going to get even better than that. Just everything about New England right now is so fluid that it's almost just they get up to such a big lead, they stomp on you in the first half, and their defense swarms you in the second, so you really can't make a whole lot of headway, and they're taking the ball over, they're getting to the quarterback. Patriots defense is not to be messed with this year.
No, and again, and when it comes to even from the passing side as well, I mean, this has been the number 1 defense in fantasy.
Absolutely.
They let up the least amount of yards passing, rushing. Again, it's a joke. It's a total joke. And again, why are the Patriots so good? They're able to do stuff like that. And they're, I don't want to say miles ahead of the other top defensive teams in the NFL right now. But as of right now, looking at it, just not a great situation for Frank Gore at all.
Speaking of John Ross, who we brought up in the previous question, at Lalo Kara 913 checks in on Twitter, asking us at Fensty Sports, at FSM Contest, at Benny Heiss, who should I start between John Ross or DK Metcalf? This feels like a great DK Metcalf week. Again, the matchup is very advantageous against Arizona. I'm not thinking twice about this. I'm going DK.
Nope, absolutely. And the one thing with DK Metcalf we've been seeing, and the thing that I loved about DK Metcalf, and I watched a lot of tape on some of these rookies, and I loved his speed. I know that he had the reputation of bad hands and whatnot, and he'll have his growing pains, but great tutor and a great mentor in Russell Wilson, and getting consistent targets 6 to 7 per game. So again, because of that consistency and lack of other options as well outside of Lockett, let's go DK Metcalf there.
One quick question before we get to Fever has a question on YouTube Live, same with Jax and Justin and Benson. Fever asked the question, any thoughts on picking up Golden Tate? Should I go ahead and pick him up early before he comes back from his suspension? Yeah, I think Golden Tate is a fine option, especially with what the Giants plan on doing in the intermediate part of the game. I think it's also dependent on who you'd have to drop for him, but I think Golden Tate, they brought him in for a reason because they thought they were a fit in this offense. So what we're seeing out of Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram, I think Golden Tate makes a lot of sense.
I mean, and let's face it, with everything that happened with Golden Tate, he shouldn't have been suspended at least this long. It's unfortunate, the whole situation, if everything he's saying is true. That's a BS suspension in my mind. But still, it happened. I have 5 shares of this guy in season-long fantasy football for a reason, Ben. I mean, look, after Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, who else is there? You got Saquon that's hurt right now. Oh, I'm going to beat the timetable. But that's not right now. So I am totally fine with you picking up Golden Tate. But remember, if you have a short bench, then you got to consider it. If you don't need him this week, pick him up with your short bench. But
absolutely. Still, and the other thing, too,
you got to be careful.
I was going to say the other thing, too, is that if you're in a league with like only 4, maybe 5 bench spots, chances are that when Golden Tate comes back, you can still probably bid on him and be fine. Like if you know that you need to hang on to a certain someone for this week, you're probably going to be in a decent situation, and nobody's going to bid a ton on Golden Tate, I wouldn't think, because you haven't seen it from him yet. There's probably going to be other guys that go off this week that probably get more opportunity when it comes to free agent blind bidding.
And the thing with Golden Tate going back to last year, when he was with Detroit, it was a perfect situation. I owned him everywhere then. But then all the owners got to suffer because of the double bye week that he got once he was traded to Philly that took him out for 2 bye weeks, which is just bad luck right there. That's where reality and fantasy clash. So Golden Tate, in this situation from the start. His ADP was great. It was in the hundreds, and that's why I was able to get him for $1 or $2 in auctions. So yes, I am for picking up Golden Tate. Go for it.
Fever has a couple questions. He wants to know how much Melvin Gordon is going to play this week, and does he play him over Wayne Gallman? So we talked about this, Fever, at the beginning of the show. We're staying away from Melvin Gordon this week. The emergency role, there's just no real reason against Miami that they would need him, and that's unless Austin Eckler gets hurt. And so I think they have a chance to put this game away early. It's the Chargers. They're going from West Coast to East Coast. They can find a way to Chargers all over themselves. They've done it before in the past. I just don't feel like this is the week where coming back, short week back with the team, maybe he gets a goal line opportunity, sneaks into the end zone. I'd much rather play Wayne Gallman, who I know is going to get volume this week.
We've said it all show, Ben. I'm going to be spectator for when it comes to Melvin Gordon this week. Season-long DFS. I'm going to be the one watching.
Fair enough. From Jack on YouTube Live, wide receiver toss-up between Brandon Cooks at home against Tampa, Hollywood Brown at home against Cleveland, or Marvin Jones at home against Kansas City. Boy, talk about 3 awesome dart throws in DFS this week. If you had a team and those were your 3 wide receivers, you could have a chance of finishing last or finishing in first in a big field GPP at fantasy sports markets, right? All 3 of those guys are big play threats. So let's go through them really quickly. Brandon Cooks might likely be ending up with Vernon Hargreaves shadowing him, and that's a tough matchup. We'll see whether or not Hargreaves ends up on Cooks or on Robert Woods. Cooper Kupp probably has the best matchup of anybody from the Rams once again this week, and he's getting wide receiver 1 type of volume. Hollywood Brown led the Ravens in air yards last week. Probably should have had a couple big plays, except Lamar Jackson missed him down the field in Kansas City. And then Marvin Jones has another great matchup this week. on the other side with Kenny Golladay going up against the Chiefs at home in a game that you know that the Lions are going to have to throw a ton in. So of all these big play threats, Fensty, I'm curious to know which one of them are you most likely to go with?
I'm going to go, especially with where I like the Rams in this situation. I know it's not the best matchup. I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks here. I think that he's going to eat along with Cooper Kupp. Both of them are in good spots. I know the matchup, again, not the best, but still overall highest ceiling to me. That would have to be Brandon Cooks.
I agree with you. And he tends to also put a better home road split. So I probably rank him in the order that you sent him to us. I go Brandon Cooks 1, Hollywood Brown 2, Marvin Jones 3. And again, with the understanding, Jack, that all three of those guys could go off today. But I do think that with Goff, his home road splits are terrific. Same thing with Brandon Cooks. We're probably going with Cooks here just because I feel like it's going to be a more consistent option for you and has a better chance probably at a higher floor as well. From Justin.
Right. And
go ahead,
Matthew
Fensty.
Stafford also, with Matthew Stafford also a little bit banged up, it feels me safer putting Marvin Jones as that third option there.
From Justin on YouTube Live. So I asked on Twitter and joined a little bit late, so may have missed out. I need 3 of the following: 2 running backs and a flex. And he gives us 5 guys. So we basically have to eliminate 2 of them here. He is Kerryon Johnson, David Montgomery, LaShawn McCoy, Chris Godwin, and Josh Jacobs. So let's start at the running backs. Chris Godwin really the only wide receiver out of there. Which 2 running backs are your favorite between Kerryon Johnson, David Montgomery, LaShawn McCoy, and Josh Jacobs? I think we can eliminate LaShawn McCoy. We can take him out because we just don't know what the Chiefs running back situation are. So we had one got to go. Kerryon Johnson, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs.
Kerryon Johnson. Let's clinch him in there right now.
Okay. So you're taking him out.
No. I'm saying that keep him in.
Okay.
He's the number 1 priority.
Yes, I agree with you. I will keep Kerryon. So toss up between David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs this week. I think I prefer Josh Jacobs because the Colts, normally I'd feel like that's a good spot for them, but they're missing some guys. Darius Leonard, I believe, is out. I think Jacobs could be in line for a good game. I think I'd rather have him and Kerryon over Montgomery.
Yeah, and again, we're still trying to figure out how Montgomery is going to be used to the full utilization here. We're still really critical of what Matt Nagy hasn't done with this guy. So again, in a good match against Indy, you got to go Jacobs here.
Okay, so our running backs, Justin, for you, are Kerryon Johnson and Josh Jacobs. And then for the flex, we got to choose between David Montgomery, LaShawn McCoy, and Chris Godwin. I would say this: in standard leagues, I would go Montgomery. In PPR leagues, I would go Chris Godwin.
I'm with you there because, again, you're looking for that touchdown in standard. And for what we've seen with Jameis Winston, if you know this, if you own Tampa Bay wide receivers, Jameis is going to be on a give you a nice little roller coaster ride like you would see in a theme park. But he's going to throw a lot. He's going to throw a lot of picks some games. But you know that he's been feeding both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin healthy, he's going to play. So I'm going to go with Chris Godwin there.
I have a weird feeling today about that Rams-Buccaneers game because I know that the Bucs gave up a bunch of points to the Giants, but they also didn't have any tape on Daniel Jones. They've been pretty decent on defense so far this year, especially in their run defense. And I just wonder whether or not that we might be sleeping on them a little bit. Like, Todd Bowles has them playing fairly well, far more confident than they were a season ago. And the Rams have been starting off a little bit slow. So I wonder whether or not the Bucs might be able to hang around today and perhaps at least cover, maybe even pick off Jared Goff a couple times. Do you think there's any sort of viability for them in DFS this week?
I mean, it's interesting because, again, when you look at their rushing yards, again, they're top 17 when it comes to rushing yards allowed. I mean, under 70, that's very good thus far. So you've got something there. Yeah, if you're looking to take a flyer, why not? Again, the Rams are going to be playing a little bit more on the slow side, and especially with Todd Gurley as well. Man, everyone seems to be reading that right with him because I don't know if he's the same guy, Ben. He's just not the same. So again, I'm willing to take that flyer.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's perfectly reasonable. So appreciate your question from you, Justin. Good luck today. Benson checks in on YouTube Live. We got to figure out which of these guys he's going to play in his flex in a full point PPR. He has DJ Chark, he's Stephon Diggs, John Brown, DK. Yeah, there's a lot, so we got to try and disseminate between the two of them. You and I both don't like Diggs against the Bears this week. Just tough matchup, especially in bad weather. Eventually, he's going to come around. You can't drop him yet. I know that he's been a source of a lot of frustration. DJ Chark on the road against Denver, I don't particularly care for him. John Brown against New England's defense, I don't really love there. DK Metcalf, I think, is perfectly in play. John Ross, I'm probably moving out. To me, it's between DK Metcalf and Devontae Freeman in the flex PPR, and I think because of how bad Arizona's defense is fenced, I'd probably go DK Metcalf here.
Yeah, again, you're going to want exposure in this game today. And as much as I want to put in Devonta Freeman, it's so hard, especially to fully trust that he'll get you those 15 points and half-point PPR. I mean, that's what I'm looking for, and he's just not there yet. So with DK Metcalf, again, not as many options to really battle him for targets. I like him a little bit better.
From Zay on YouTube Live, should I trade Odell Beckham Jr. for David Johnson and Christian Kirk? I think I would. I think I would, and I'm buying that Cleveland's offense comes around at some point. But I just know that from a volume standpoint, each and every week, that David Johnson and Christian Kirk are going to get a ton of volume and a ton of reps. That's just already established at this point. We don't know what the Cleveland offense is going to establish at this point.
Man, it's almost like this guy is selling David Johnson too low here. Again, you invested so much into him. And if you look at how much, when it comes to overall, how much you're downgrading yourself from Odell Beckham Jr. to Kirk, it's not too much right there. And you're getting a stud running back. So, yes, make that trade.
From Twitter, this is an interesting one. At the West Bank Who Dat. This is Dontrell Inman or Paul Richardson, and crazy question, but should I go ahead and dump Antonio Brown, or do you think he'll sign with somebody else? So let's start with the first part. Dontrell Inman or Paul Richardson this week. The only way I go Richardson is if Terry McLaurin is out, right? Otherwise you go Inman, right?
Right. Again, it's one of those situations where Keenan Allen's the only guy there right now. It's him and Eckler and maybe a little Melvin Gordon. That's about it. So many injuries. Somebody else has to be getting targets there. Let's go Inman because McLaurin looks like he's going to be playing.
As for Antonio Brown, I just have a hard time seeing him getting another shot in the NFL this year. I don't know what his rules are if it's a keeper league, but do you really want to have anything to do with it at this point? Like maybe, If anything, I try and sell him off to somebody in your league saying, hey, do you want to buy low on a guy that if he comes back could help you win your league? But I just don't want anything to do with him anymore.
To that, Ben, I say good luck with that. Yeah. Because it's going to be very hard to sell this guy. I mean, he's going at it yesterday morning with Baker Mayfield. He's calling out everyone. This guy's a poison. This is where fantasy and reality, you got to shift to the reality that is sports. This guy's a poison right now. And he'll interrupt any kind of team flow because he's so selfish and he's on his own and he'll make his own antics, bring all the drama to him. I mean, before you know it, this guy was done with the NFL a few weeks ago. Rosenhaus says no. He's threatened retirement. I'm getting rid of Antonio Brown everywhere. I have 4 shares, Ben. Getting rid of him everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's the right move. And he was somebody that was like just far off my list as possible. Even if I think if he would have fallen to like the 4th round, maybe I would have considered it. And this was before all the other shenanigans and all the other crazy bullshit that he was pulling this year. So
Right. See, before the shenanigans though, Ben, when it was just the feet, that was when I was drafting most of my teams before Helmet Gate started. And I was fine with getting him in the 3rd round, especially in deeper leagues. I had no issue with that. I'm like, it's Antonio Brown. He has the skills. But what's wrong with this guy? Because now you can't trust him. He's a detriment to any team he joins.
Yeah, I'm just staying as far away as humanly possible. From your boy Stack on Twitter, DJ Moore or DJ Chark? Pick your DJ.
Wow, that's tough DJ to pick. Again, like we talked about, I want exposure from Carolina. So again, I'm going to go DJ Moore there. Like Moore and Samuel today.
I like both of them as well. DJ Moore is my pick. And again, we'll see whether or not the matchup on the road at Denver. I know the Broncos are 0-3. It's still a very tough place to play and a tough place to win in the month of September. Got some rapid-fire ones coming in on YouTube Live, and then we'll go through some of our favorite plays over at FSM today. Don't forget there are regular contest and Superflex contests over at Fantasy Sports Markets, over $220,000 up for grabs. And make sure you guys, if you've never played before, use that promo code at the bottom. It is $5 free. It is on the house, plus a Refer a Friend program. You can start with that code and $100 in your FSM account just for telling your friends and sharing your own referral code with them over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Toss-up from our guy Fever, Chris Boswell or Adam Vinatieri. If we're looking to do some fantasy kickers today, Fancy, let's get wild. Fantasy kickers, you got Boswell at home against the Cincinnati Bengals or Adam Vinatieri in the Dome against Oakland. I feel like I kind of want to go Boswell here just because I know that Vinatieri is indoors and the Raiders aren't great. But I just feel like Cincinnati's defense is so bad that the Pittsburgh Steelers have a chance to blow this game open and just kick it away. They're
pathetic. And that's why you're going with the kicker that's facing the pathetic team, and that is Cincy, unfortunately. So we're going to go Boswell there.
From Sean on YouTube Live, Jacoby Brissett or Kyler Murray today? Both of them have nice matchups, and I think it's a legit question because Brissett's been good this year. Like, Brissett's been a guy that's not just a fill-in quarterback anymore. I think you can rely on him for over 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns each and every week. But Kyler Murray always is going to be the higher ceiling play, and Seattle doesn't really impress me all that much. They got a great I know Russell Wilson played great last week at home against the Saints, but that was after they had gotten blown out already. I think Kyler Murray could have a big day.
Yes, but let's also talk about this, Ben. T.Y. Hilton is doubtful for this game, has not practiced. Mm-hmm. So I was actually going to ask you this earlier, Ben, whether or not, because again, Brissett has been good, whether or not this is Paris Campbell's time to get more targets, or even Pascal as well, we go and take a flyer on him. But in this situation with T.Y. Hilton's health in question, we're going to have to go Kyler there.
All right, a couple more. One question wants to know what our thoughts on Will Dissly are. We talked about it briefly at the beginning of the show. He's a great DFS flyer today. If you need a tight end in season long, he's absolutely worthy of the start. And then what I would do is I'd try and trade him. They just re-signed Luke Wilson. He's probably not going to play much today. But I think they like Will Dissly, but I think right now he's putting up better numbers than some of the studs in fantasy football. If you chase touchdowns, I feel like it's not going to be like an Evan Ingram situation with Andrew Luck and the Colts last year, right? Like, he's got 3 touchdowns on the year. Like, are you buying Will Dissly for the rest of the season, Fensty?
Again, I'm not trading for him right now because I don't theoretically trade for tight ends, Ben. I don't feel the need to do that unless I'm going after one of the top guys that we're used to, unless I'm targeting Kelsey. Tight end's one of the easiest positions, in my opinion, to stream, and especially for DFS as well, playing the matchups, battling against Arizona. I agree with your strategy with Will Dissly. Try to shop him, but I'm not going to pay some kind of low-end running back or even wide receiver to get a tight end like that. It's going to be playing the matchups with him.
I think that's perfectly fair. All right, last question of the day comes in from Sean. This is from Sam. I'm sorry, one from Sean, one from Sam, so we have 2, so we'll go through them really quickly. Questions just coming in, bap, left and right, Fence. It's hard to keep track of all of them, but we are going to be there. So let's start with Sean's question, then we'll get to Sam's. We have to pick a flex and full PPR. There's some similar guys, so that's probably why I was getting confused. Pick a flex and full PPR, Derrick Henry, Todd Gurley, Juju, Sterling Shepard, John Ross. I'm going to eliminate Henry in full point PPR. I'm going to eliminate John Ross. So we got to pick one of these 3 guys between Todd Gurley at home against Tampa Bay, who's been surprisingly very good against the run this year, Juju Smith-Schuster at home against Cincinnati, or Sterling Shepard. To me, Fensty, I'm probably going Juju here. Great matchup for the Steelers at home against one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. Granted, Washington's in that conversation too, but I prefer Juju to Sterling, and I think that's the play here.
We are attacking Cincy full force, and with that, we're going Juju.
Okay, so here we go. This is the last one coming in from @SamKingSolver on Twitter. We got to decide between 2 of these guys: David Montgomery, Devontae Freeman, Ronald Jones, or Carlos Hyde. It does not say whether it is a points per reception league or a standard league. Ronald Jones, let's just throw him in the garbage. Not interested. Right. Carlos Hyde, decent matchup against Carolina, but I just don't trust Carlos Hyde. I'd much rather play David Montgomery, and I'd much rather play Devontae Freeman at home against Tennessee. What about you?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing with Carlos Hyde is, as much as I want to anoint him and make him the RB1 there, and while he is defeating Duke Johnson in that regard, when you look at the carries, 10, 20, 10, that lacks consistency right there. So I'm not going to go with him in this situation.
Okay, so there you guys go. Those have been your questions for Fantasy Football Sunday. Really quickly, Fensty, let's go through a few of our favorite plays for fantasy sports markets today. At the quarterback spot, we both talked about it before. Pat Mahomes is in a dome. It's very exciting. He's got speed all over the place. He's going to chuck it deep against the Lions. It's the highest total in the game. I project Mahomes to be the highest owned quarterback once again on fantasy sports markets with no salary attached to his name. But after Mahomes, who are a couple quarterbacks that you really like for today?
I mean, Phillip Rivers, again, might get most of that production from throwing in the first half, but that's all they should need. Even I'm almost hoping Miami keeps it somewhat close so it continues making him go down the field, so he'll be there as well. And again, you could go with a stack there, including Inman, so a little cheaper. Russell Wilson in a good spot. But don't forget about Matty Ice as well. That's another one, Ben, especially on FSM. You're looking to make a little bit of a difference there and not go with Mahomes, who is expected, obviously, across the board, like you said, to be the most owned. Matt Ryan is also a good spot.
Plus, if you're playing a super flex lineup on fantasy sports markets, you can go Pat Mahomes and Phillip Rivers, or Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, or Pat and Deshaun Watson, or Pat and Russell, and have that third super flex spot with the quarterback in the two super flex spots. Have Matt Ryan in there, and you get exposure to Matt Ryan at home against a leaky Tennessee defense, especially with Malcolm Butler in that secondary. I am right there with you. Not a whole lot of surprises there. If you want another contrarian spot, Matthew Stafford, I think on the other side of that game, is certainly in play. Jared Goff's home road splits has been good. And even though Daniel Jones is going to be one of the more popular cash options on the salary sites, I don't think he'll be particularly popular on FSM, and I think that's another great play to get some good leverage against the terrible Washington secondary. Running back spot, Christian McCaffrey, lock button each and every week. I think Austin Eckler, once again, is probably going to be one of those guys as well. But outside of those two, who do you like as far as some contrarian plays at fantasy sports markets this week? No salary caps at the running back spot.
I mean, two guys that I think you also have to lock in are Dalvin Cook and Mark Ingram as well, both in excellent spots today. We've just seen the production from both of them, consistency there. So those are two guys that I'm going to have a ton of exposure to from here on out until otherwise.
You know who I really like today is Marlon Mack. I think if the Colts can build up a lead, the numbers indicate that when the Colts are up, Marlon Mack gets fed. You can run on the Raiders. They haven't been particularly impressive in stopping the run so far this year. So I like Marlon Mack. I also think, too, that Jacksonville's going to have to be reliant a little bit more on Leonard Fournette. I like the fact that they're incorporating him into the passing game. And then David Johnson, too. They're going to use him a ton against Seattle. I think he's in a really nice spot. You also brought up Chris Carson, Fensty. You're buying into Chris Carson. You're buying into the love. The matchup is really strong against Arizona. Really quickly, I traded Austin Eckler, or I traded Chris Carson for Austin Eckler this week, knowing full well that Melvin Gordon was coming back. I'm still a buyer in them using Eckler. It's a full-point PPR league. So I'm curious to get your perspective on that really quick.
Yes, and again, and I'll have to go through the numbers. This is me just like thinking from all the research I've done here on this situation, because I've been telling everybody that Austin Eckler will still have standalone value even with Melvin Gordon back here. But Ben, remember, this guy last year averaged over 5 yards per carry, was still able, I believe, to crack the top 25 running backs.
Yes, he was.
Even with Melvin Gordon in most of the season. So I see where you went there, because you know Rashad Penny's going to start to get more involved in the offense here. But again, just want to say for everyone that owns Chris Carson, Pete Carroll not giving up on him just yet. So this, again, show me week for him. I don't mind it, Ben.
Yeah, I think it's an upside play for both of us. You know, it's a gamble that I think for both of us was certainly intriguing. Wide receiver spot, Keenan Allen, lock button this week against Miami on the road. Certainly Julio Jones, if you believe in Matt Ryan this week against Tennessee, can also be in there. Those are probably going to be the two chalkiest wide receivers of the week. Maybe if you're looking for a little bit of differentiation this week, you can go to Christian Kirk. You can go to Kenny Golladay on fantasy sports markets. And Sammy Watkins has been a little bit quiet, but people like to pack up somebody with Mahomes. I think the chalk stack is going to be Mahomes and Kelsey, but this week might be a little bit contrarian on FSM with Sammy Watkins because he's going to be avoiding Darius Slay.
Right, look at also some of the other guys. McCole Hardman, I do, again, want investment on that Chiefs offense. So there we talked about Carolina as well. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel still in really good spots as well. Don't forget about Mr. Thielen as well when it comes to that matchup against Chicago.
Yeah, it's a good matchup, especially in the slot against Buster Skrine, who has been better in Chicago this year, but that dude got roasted during his last few years with the New York Jets, and you saw that firsthand up close and personal. Last spot, tight end, Travis Kelce, another lock button if you want. Same with Evan Ingram. But don't be surprised if Darren Waller or Greg Olsen or Delaney Walker go off today. And then, of course, we've talked about Will Dissly ad nauseum against Arizona's defense. But to me, Kelsey and Ingram, the two lock button cash game plays this week.
Right. And again, I want to give TJ Hawkinson a little bit more credit, but not going to do that just yet. So I'm looking at him, but likely also looking at as well Delaney Walker and Austin Hooper in that matchup against each other.
All right, Fancy, another great show in the books. Where can people find you over the course of the week? How can they get to you on Twitter? How can they get more Fensty in their lives?
Always at Fensty Sports on Twitter, at Fensty1 on Instagram as well. Going to be doing a lot more NBA coverage coming up too. Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio all week long, 6 days a week, including Wake Up Fantasy Sports every single Saturday, 6 to 8 a.m. Eastern Time. You can catch the show on demand. If you don't want to wake up that early, your guy doesn't need the sleep then, Heisler, because I'm always ready to dominate.
I had the privilege of joining Fensty on the show on Saturday. We always have a blast, just like we do each and every Sunday here with you guys. So thank you for participating. Thank you for being a part of the show. Go use that free money on FSM and go win yourself possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars this NFL Sunday. For Fensty, I am Ben. Thank you guys for watching. It's Fantasy Football Sunday presented by Fantasy Sports Markets. We'll be back next week.